My dear students and viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my online class. I am Murshida Imam, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Govt Shahid, Suhrawardy College, Dhaka. Today I am going to conduct a class for the students of MA Final Year, Department of English. My dear students, how are you? Hope you are fine and doing your online classes regularly. I have chosen the topic Hamlet by William Shakespeare from the course William Shakespeare. Today I will discuss life and works of William Shakespeare. Then I will try to give you an idea about the Elizabethan Theatre, then Shakespeare's career as a dramatist, and then I will also discuss tragedy and Shakespearean tragedy. And after our discussion, I will give you homework from our today's discussion. My dear students, you know William Shakespeare is usually considered the greatest dramatist the world has known, as well the finest poet who has written in the English language. Among the predecessors of Shakespeare who contributed to the progress of the drama, Robert Greene, Kyd, George Peele, John Lilly and Christopher Marlowe are worthy of mention. But the English drama rose to its highest pitch in the hands of Shakespeare. My dear students, no other writer's plays have been produced so many times and so widely read in so many different lands. His works have been translated into more languages than any book in the world except the Bible. More than a century ago, in an outburst in praise of his hero, Thomas Carlyle exclaimed, "The Indian Empire will go at any rate someday. But this Shakespeare does not go. He lasts forever with us. We cannot give up our Shakespeare." And Ben Jonson said of Shakespeare, "He was not of an age, but for all time. Play after play runs from his pen, mighty dramas of human life and character." William Shakespeare was born at Stratford-on-Avon, England on 23rd April in 1564, though his birth date is controversial. Then he left Stratford for London in 1586, where he resided till 1609. He joined an actors' company there, subsequently acquiring an interest in the Globe Theatre Southwark. His own dramatic writings were done between 1501 and 1612. He is credited with 37 plays altogether, of which only 16 were published before his death, and he wrote a memorable series of sonnets. The last 5 years of his life were spent at Stratford, where he died on 23rd April 1616. Now I will discuss Shakespeare's career as a dramatist. There are 4 stages in the development of the dramatic art of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's first period represents the time of his apprenticeship to the art of the dramatist. The first period is called in the workshop, when Shakespeare was learning his trade as a dramatic craftsman. And in this period, that is in the first period of his dramatic career, he wrote many of the famous plays, that is the first part of Henry VI, the second and third parts of Henry VI, then Love's Labour Lost, The Comedy of Errors, Two Gentlemen of Verona, A Midsummer Night's Dream, etc. Okay, and the second period shows in general a great advance in power of characterization and in the command of poetic resources. And this period is called in the world. That is, in this period, Shakespeare gets some experience of human life. And in this period, that is in the second period of his dramatic career, he wrote Richard III, King John, Merchant of Venice, Much Ado About Nothing, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, etc. Okay. Then, my dear students, the third period extends from the beginning of the 17th century to about 1608. And this is called the period of sadness and philosophical contemplation. The fourth period is the period of calmness and serenity, and extends from 1609 to 1613. And in the third period, that is, he wrote Julius Caesar, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, Antony and Cleopatra, All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, etc. Okay. And in the last period, that is in the fourth period of his dramatic career, he wrote Pericles, The Tempest, The Winter's Tale, etc. Okay. Then now, my dear students, I want to give you an idea about the Elizabethan Theatre. The design of an Elizabethan theatre was very different from the sort of thing we see today, with the stage set like a picture in a frame and separated from the audience by the orchestra. When James Burbage built the theatre in 1576, he simply used the design with which the actors were already familiar in the in-ears. The stage was still a platform mostly open to the sky, standing against the wall at one end of the yard and surrounded by galleries. When the Globe and the Fortune followed more than 20 years later, the actors introduced various minor improvements, but they still did not change the general design. And if I want to say about the construction, that is, the Globe was an unroofed building, circular in shape and constructed mainly of wood. The actors' dressing rooms and galleries for the spectators lined the inner wall to a depth of about 12 feet, leaving a central area some 55 square feet, and nearly half of this area was occupied by the stage, which extended 27.5 feet into the yard and was 43 feet wide. It was raised about 5 feet from the floor, and the whole building was 80 feet high. When full, this minute enclosure somehow held about 2,000 people, of whom 800 paid 1 penny to stand in the yard. The others paid a further penny or 2 pence for a seat in the surrounding galleries, which were on 3 levels. For the wealthy few, there may have been seats at 6 pence or a shilling in the Lord's rooms, overlooking the stage and possibly on the stage itself. My dear students, now I will give you an idea about tragedy. What is a tragedy? My dear students, you know Hamlet is a tragedy. Then what is a tragedy? Yes. A tragedy is a serious play or narrative in which the hero becomes engaged in a conflict, experiences great suffering, and is finally defeated and dies. The classical conception of tragedy, as defined by Aristotle in his Poetics, involves a hero of noble stature whose fortunes are reversed as a result of a weakness that is called tragic flaw in an otherwise noble nature. Othello's tragedy, for example, is the result of his jealousy, and Macbeth's the result of his high ambition, And the effect of dramatic tragedy, according to Aristotle, is to arouse in the spectator feeling of pity and fear in such a way as to produce a catharsis or purging of these emotions. In England, tragedy began in Elizabethan times. The chief influences insofar as dramatic tradition and theory are concerned were classical, the Poetics of Aristotle and the tragedies of the Roman philosopher Seneca. In the latter part of the 16th century, however, playwrights paid less attention to classical restrictions, producing dramas that varied widely in form and structure. These plays culminated in Shakespeare's tragedies. King Lear, Hamlet, and Macbeth are usually regarded as the highest achievements of the English stage. After the 17th century, few tragedies in the classical or Aristotelian sense were written. Eventually, tragedy came to be applied to any serious work that is tragic in tone and intention. My dear students, now it's time to talk about Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespeare wrote a number of tragedies which are different from each other. Firstly, with Shakespeare, tragedy is generally concerned with persons of high degree, often with kings, princes, and sometimes with the leaders of men, such as Prince Hamlet, Coriolanus, Othello, etc. Secondly, the calamities of tragedy do not simply happen, nor are they sent by a supernatural power. They proceed mainly from the actions of men. Thirdly, conscious, voluntary actions, actions expressive of character, are the very essence of a tragedy. Fourthly, the action of a tragedy may be described as a conflict. There are two types of conflict: outward conflict and inward struggle going on in the hero's soul. Finally, we come to the hero. The hero with Shakespeare is an exceptional being, a person of high degree or of public importance. The hero has often one predominant passion or feeling. And as a Shakespearean tragedy represents a conflict which terminates in a catastrophe, any such tragedy may be divided into three parts. The first of these sets forth or expounds the situation or state of affairs out of which the conflict arises, and it may therefore be called the exposition. The second deals with the definite beginning, the growth, and the vicissitudes of the conflict. The final section of the tragedy shows the issue of the conflict in a catastrophe. A Shakespearean tragedy may therefore be safely described as the story of a single character. The others are eclipsed by the hero and play ancillary and contributory parts. The hero must be a person of high degree, a King Lear or a Prince Hamlet, a general of the Republic like Othello, a leader in the state like Brutus, Antony, or Coriolanus. In the Greek tragedy, we have seen the noble and virtuous hero comes to grief through the jealousy of gods. Ruin does not overwhelm him because of any sins on his own part. It arises from a blast of the envy of God. Okay, but the sufferings and calamities of the hero in a Shakespearean tragedy are not a supernatural visitation. They proceed from some weak traits in the character of the hero, from ruin to ruin, and ultimately envelop him in disaster. A tragic hero in Shakespeare is the author of his own woes, who, through some flaw in his own character, brings the ornateness about his years. This presents a striking contrast to the Greek tragedy, in which the hero is the scapegoat of a mocking destiny. He is not a free agent in the Shakespearean sense. Of course, destiny is not altogether absent from the Shakespearean tragedy. Here, character is destiny. The question arises, is the Shakespearean tragedy a tragedy of character or a tragedy of destiny? Now, my dear students, from our today's discussion, I want to give you homework. Write down the homework, please. Write short notes on number A, Govt Theatre. Number B, Tragedy. Number C, Shakespearean Tragedy. And number D, Tragic Hero. Okay, you have to complete or you have to write down those 4 short notes. Okay, hope all of you will do your homework. My dear students, in our next class we will read introduction to Hamlet. Okay, that is date of composition and sources of Hamlet. Then I will introduce you with the characters of the drama or of the play Hamlet, and then I will also discuss that is critical appreciation of Hamlet. And after completing text, I will give you some important questions, okay, from this topic, that is from Hamlet. My dear students, then no more today. See you again in our next class. Till then, goodbye. Allah Hafiz.